All right, I want to bring in CTV's political commentator and the former leader of the NDP this morning. We've got a whole bunch of things to discuss with you this morning. Tom, good to see you.
Good to see you, Marcia.
So let's talk about the minority Liberals outstretching their arms to welcome Chris d'Entremont. What does it say to you about the state of the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre's leadership? And we should mention, Tom, that we haven't heard from Poilievre specifically on this yet.
No, he's been sending out Andrew Scheer and other people to beat up on Chris d'Entremont for crossing the floor. You know, you mentioned in the intro that I'm the former head of the NDP. It was the only party in Parliament that had a firm rule against floor crossing. For us in the NDP, it was always a question of ethics. You got elected with that party, you can become an independent, but you can't become a member of our caucus until you run. That actually happened when I was leader, 2015. Maria Morani, very respected, serious person. I mean, she's a criminologist who's well known. She was with the Bloc, and for reasons that for us were very noble, she said she couldn't stand the Bloc's attitude towards minorities. She left the party and wanted to come with us. We said, look, run in the election, which she did, and that's fine, but you can't be part of caucus. For us, it's a question of principle. You can't become an NDPer. It's not fair for your voters because you didn't run for the NDP in the election, and I think that that's the right way to look at it. Chris d'Entremont, of course, it has his own view. The people in his riding, as we just heard in that Vox Pop, seem to be okay with it largely, but it's not just about him or about the Liberals. It's really about a question of parliamentary ethics, and some great work has been done on this. It was a book just published, a big book by people who hold the chair from the Jarzowski Foundation in political ethics, and it's No I in Team is the name of the book, and it's a great book, and it talks exactly about this type of thing, floor crossing amongst others, and I have a real problem with it. I still do today.
You have a problem with it. I'm also wondering, and I'm sure you heard Scott Reid, he was describing that fever that was going through Ottawa yesterday, as there was all this speculation that there were going to be
a whole bunch of others.
Yeah, 5 or more people, could be, you know, a great big mess, all kinds of political intrigue. That didn't happen. But having said that, Tom, do you see others crossing the floor? And I just have to ask the question, how much guts does it take to do that?
It takes a lot because, of course, the people who won from the Conservatives under Mr. Poilievre were swimming against a very strong Liberal tide under Carney. So they're the ones who tend to have the most conservative ridings. But I will tell you this. I've rarely seen so many Conservatives talk on the record and off the record about how upset they were about the attack by Pierre Poilievre against the RCMP. That was absolutely not on for many of them. It was totally unseemly for the leader of the opposition to do what he did. He tried to change his story after saying he was talking about one individual leader. All you have to do is read what he actually said. He talked about the RCMP, and it was not at all in character for the Conservative Party to have a leader attacking the attacking the RCMP the way he did.
So where do you think this goes from here, Tom? Do you see others following?
Well, we'll find out if d'Entremont is right. I mean, he's the one who let slip or indicated that there might be others. And others said to him, "Oh, I understand. What you're doing, that sort of thing."
You think it was a slip?
Well, oh no, I think that the Liberals knew that he had information, but is that information really valid? In other words, is it somebody, an old buddy of his, saying in the Conservative caucus, I get you, buddy, I totally understand, and he took that to mean, oh, they're crossing the floor too, or is it actual preparedness to do that? The Conservatives have made it as uncomfortable as they possibly could for Mr. d'Entremont. You know, the attacks have been quite personal, but it's not even about d'Entremont. I sincerely believe it's about the institution itself. This is how it works. You put yourself forward. You say, this is my party. This is what I stand for. Vote for me. You can't just change that 6 months later and say, oh, everything's changed and now I'm going to go with another party. That's not fair for the people who voted for you.
And then lastly, do you think that this is taking away from substantive conversation about the budget, Tom?
Well, it won't take away for long because Elizabeth May, I think, had a really good take on the budget with regard to its shortcomings on environment, which are many. It was such a surprise to see that from somebody who knows as much about environment and sustainable development as Mark Carney. And there's no leader in the G7 who knows as much as him. And yet, canceling a tree planting program to bring 2 billion trees to be planted. We lost over 8 billion trees just in the 2023 wildfires. It was about time we started doing something to correct that. Then he says he's going to remove, emissions caps on oil and gas if we can come up with a way to to hold on to carbon, to sequester carbon. Well, guess what? Trees are the best way to do that. So it was all a muddle with regard to the progressive side. And Carney's already being tasked, with being far too conservative. And the one thing that he could have shown a little bit of, more progressive leaning attitude on the environment, he completely messed up. So I'm not convinced that I'm pretty sure Elizabeth May is not going to get to vote, won't vote for this thing, unless, of course, Carney does something unexpected and changes, for example, the cancellation of the tree planting program. I'm looking at the NDP. I can't see how any of them can vote for this thing. I mean, you're promising to furlough tens of thousands of civil servants, and the civil service unions have always been the backbone of your support, and you're going to go along and vote for that? Good luck with that. So I think that, it's going to be very close one way or the other. By the way, keep an eye on the block. This is a famous game that sometimes gets played. They've been huffing and puffing and saying, "Whoa, we had, these couldn't be discussed. We had these absolute requirements for the budget, and we're going to vote against it." Yeah, let's see if everybody from the bloc actually shows up for the vote. I'm convinced that to a person, every single member of the Conservative caucus will be there to vote against the budget. I'm not worried about that. But keep an eye on the bloc, because they have to go before the NDP in terms of the vote. And I'd love to see whether or not they're actually all going to be there, or they're going to give themselves a little bit of a cushion just to make sure the government doesn't fall and we're into an election. I don't think anybody in their right mind would want an election. Marcia, sending Canadians to the polls in the middle of the Christmas season, again, you'd get pummeled, whoever provoked that.
And we will leave it right there for this Thursday. Tom, great to see you this morning.
Good
Tom
to see you
Mulcair.
too, Marcia. All the best.